Path of Exile just announced a whole lot of crafting changes for Path of Exile 1. There's some very cool new orbs, some very cool old orbs, and a lot of implications about what this means for crafting and the economy. It's all good news though, so let's get right into it. GG just released this trailer, and in this, they have confirmed the return of the VEILED Chaos Orb. This is a massive change for almost everyone who wasn't giga rich. In 3.24, what they did was they changed the VEILED Orb instead to function almost like a Chaos Orb in PoE 2. What it would do is remove a modifier and then add a VEILED modifier. That's how the old Ashling used to work. So it was very useful, but it was more niche and much more expensive. However, the old VEILED Chaos Orb was much more commonly used and very useful for acquiring certain modifiers, especially movement speed on boots. So the return of the VEILED Chaos Orb is very good news. I'll show you an example of how this was used previously. Use our little stash. We're going to use a VEILED Chaos and hit this guy. Our suffixes. So what we're doing here is we are crafting on suffixes cannot be changed, and then we're going to apply the VEILED Chaos Orb. What that does is it's going to re-roll all the prefixes and give one VEILED modifier. So let's just see that. Save. And there you go. See, so the prefix has changed, and now we have a VEILED prefix. And now the good news with boots is there is a very high chance to unveil movement speed, a good roll of movement speed when using unveiling. So hit a VEILED prefix. Now, before we go for the unveil, what we want to do always is block mana. Now, I believe it's a 98% chance to unveil a form of movement speed. I've never not unveiled movement speed. Best movement speed, Onslaught. Second best. Why do I seem so tired? Let's click. Onslaught, beautiful. There you go. So that is one of the main use cases for VEILED Chaos Orbs. And like I said, it was changed in 3.24, and the impact on the economy and all of you was this. So in 3.24, that was Necropolis League. This is the price of VEILED Chaos Orbs. They started out like 36C, 50C, 70C. They're going up. In 3 weeks, they were 1,000 Chaos Orbs. This is probably around, I'm guessing, like 5 to 7 Divines. Before this change, look how cheap they were at 3 weeks. 9 Chaos Orbs, 8 Chaos Orbs, 5 Chaos Orbs. So this being changed was just like a nerf to basically everyone who wasn't a top end crafter. Now, they've also done something very cool, which is adding the VEILED Exalted Orb, which is something that we were asking for a long time, but instead they just removed the VEILED Chaos and then changed how it worked. But now they've added in the VEILED Exalted Orb. This functions the way Ashling used to, and the way that the VEILED Chaos Orb has functioned for the last 2 leagues. So it will remove a random modifier and add a random VEILED modifier to a rare item. This is very useful in a lot of more high-end scenarios. So an example of that would be, again, with boot crafting. That's a very common use for Ashling or VEILED Exalted Orbs, where you craft your suffixes and then you want to force some kind of prefix. And then what you do is go, prefixes cannot be changed or suffixes cannot be changed, and then use your VEILED Exalt. It'll remove one of your prefixes, add another VEILED modifier, and then you can try and complete the craft. I've done this in so many videos, Ashlings and VEILED Exalted Orbs. So these are very useful orbs. It's great that they've itemized them like this. However, another big bonus of these being itemized and a big buff to high-end players is that these can be combined with Hinekora's locks. So before you use your VEILED Exalted Orb, what you do, use your Hinekora's lock. That will show you the outcome of the next currency item that you use on it without actually applying it. So it's like a bit of a peer into the future. You can see what's going to happen before you use the orb. And with VEILED Exalted Orbs, this can be used on very expensive like mirror tier items to get a perfect 6th and final mod. This is a wonderful change. Great buff to the vast majority of players, and they've still maintained the VEILED Exalted Orb for the top end of crafters. But before we get too excited, there is one thing we do need to discuss, and that is the availability of these orbs. So the reason that the VEILED Chaos Orb became so expensive is that these, instead of being global drops, you could kill monsters and get them from anywhere, I believe, or at least a lot of different places. I think a lot of them dropped in Sanctum, so there was a ton of them. That's why they were so cheap. But then they changed it so that Veiled Orbs only dropped from Katarina, and they were quite rare. So there were very few, and a lot of people needed them. So a normal, let's say, 2 to 3 Exalt or 2 to 3 Divine Bootcraft instead turned into like a 10 to 12 Divine Bootcraft. That just sucked. But looking at these orbs over here, where are these going to drop? Are Veiled Chaos Orbs going to drop from the old places? Are they going to be global drops? Are they going to be fairly common? Or are these now going to be relegated to Katarina? We can listen and hear.
26 will be bringing back the Veiled Chaos Orb. Both failed currencies will now exist.
Both will now exist, but he doesn't really say where they'll come from. So hopefully they revert them to their traditional drop stage. They drop all over the place, meaning they'll be very common and very cheap for everyone. So let's see what's going to happen with the Veiled Orbs. However, there are a couple of other orbs that GG have added that look very interesting. On their surface, maybe not that exciting to some people. However, crafters might have some very interesting ideas with these that I'll get into. So over here,
we're adding Exalted Orbs that apply Shaper Influence and Elder Influence to items.
So these are similar to the Conqueror Exalted Orbs that currently exist in Path of Exile, where you can apply Hunter, Crusader, we have Warlord, and Redeemer. If I right-click this and then right-click on an item, it'll apply that influence to an item. So if you want, let's say, a specific base with a specific influence, you can do it like that. Previously, you could actually get Shaper or Elder influence in this way, but it was a little bit of a roundabout method where what we would do is we would go for, let's say, Redeemer influence, then we go over to the Hotch crafting station, and what you can do is you can actually change the influence type. So what this does, it'll randomize the influence type and reforge it. So this is going to reroll the whole item, but we can maybe get, let's say, there we go, Shaper. So that's previously how we would do it, but now we can just apply the orb to the base type without having to do this. There is some more that is very interesting to this, and this is more of a niche crafting use case. However, some people are going to benefit from this and find it a little bit interesting. So let's have a look at another craft. When it comes to crafting certain types of items, let's say they already have influence. So let's say we want to craft a scepter that has a specific Shaper modifier. Because you have to start the craft with the Shaper influence, that dilutes the pool of modifiers, meaning it's adding a whole lot of extra modifiers that might make hitting certain other modifiers a little bit harder. So let's say we have a Shaper influence scepter and we want to hit level of all spells skill gems, and we have to alt spam this. This might take thousands, and then if we have to do it on a Shaper influence base, then it's going to take even more because there are more modifiers that can be hit when reforging with the Alteration Orb. With the addition of this now means that, let's say we have a scepter with 3 prefixes that are just part of the base pool. So let's say something like all spell skill gems, and then physical spell skill gems, and then let's just say something basic like spell damage, right? We can craft up to this point without Shaper influence now, and then we can apply the Shaper influence afterwards with the Shaper Orb. And let's say there is a specific Shaper suffix we want, then we can apply that with the orb. That will give you a random suffix, a random Shaper suffix. However, another thing you could do, which is cool, is before you apply the Shaper Orb, what you can do is go over to the crafting bench and do something like cannot roll attack modifiers to increase your odds of getting something that you do want. Maybe you want to get crit or something like this. This is a little bit nebulous and niche, but hopefully it is making sense. But this just allows for a bit more flexibility with crafting and different processes. So we can maybe look at a pair of gloves. Let's say we craft all of our prefixes, and then there is a specific Elder suffix we want. Let's say it is chaos damage over time multiplier. So what we can do, we craft our prefixes, we get like, let's say, life and evasion rating and physical damage to attacks. And then what we really want is chaos damage over time multiplier. Previously, what you would have to do is craft this from the ground up with the Elder Influence, whereas now you can get those prefixes fairly easily. You can maybe even just buy it off the trade site. Then what you could do is go to your crafting bench, go cannot roll attack modifiers, and now instead of a 1 in, I don't know how many chance to get, let's say, chaos damage over time multiplier, when you use that Elder Influence, now you've got a 1 in, not a 1 in 4, but let's say a 400 out of 4800, so a 1 in 12 or whatever the maths. Yeah, 1 in 12 to get it instead of a 1 in that much. So this is just an example. I'm not saying necessarily that you would go for that way, but the point is that there is more flexibility with crafting, especially on the upper end. There's more clever things that you could do with these orbs. So that is going to be it. But the big question that remains is if they are bringing back old crafting materials and reverting changes, which I cannot remember them doing in the past. I don't know if anyone in the comments has an example of when they reverted the functionality of a specific craft. If they're doing that, what else are they going to do? Are we maybe going to get Harvest Reforge Keep suffixes, Reforge Keep prefixes? It's a long shot, but it is a hope, and we will see. I'm really looking forward to Path of Exile, this new 3.26 Secrets of the Atlas. If you're a new player who hasn't played Path of Exile 1, maybe play PoE 2, be sure to like and subscribe, join in, ask questions, join the Discord, follow me on Twitch, and all of that. That's going to be it for this video. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Stay safe. Catch you in the next video, and bye-bye.
Divine power! Divine power! It's branching exile. You're making me nervous.